Thank you. I'd like to call the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen's meeting of May 22nd, 2024 to order at 6:30 p.m. Mr. Pinio, do we have a need for a non-public?
Madam Chairperson, we do not.
All right, and you have somebody to introduce?
Sure. So we'll jump right into it. Purpose of today's workshop is to go over the work that the Board of Selectmen did in conducting some interviews with staff, department heads, regarding our struggles to be able to fill some middle management positions, and what a good plan going forward is to try and create some succession planning. One of the takeaways from the last meeting was to reach out to Tata and Howard to have a preliminary conversation with them about looking at the 2020 organizational assessment, which they performed on Public Works and the Water and Sewer departments. Steve Randall and I had a Zoom call with them approximately 2 weeks ago. From that point, they provided us with a scope of work, which was a very comprehensive scope of work. And we have two gentlemen here this evening who will be able to speak briefly on behalf of that. One is Peter Goodwin. Peter has worked for the town on a couple of projects, overseen a couple of our water projects, and has been of great guidance for us. The other one is Jim Cashane. Jim is the one who actually reviewed, created, and developed the 2020 report. And these gentlemen are here to speak to us a little bit this evening about the previous report, what their proposed scope going forward would be, and to be able to answer any questions from the board. So with that said, I'd like to hand it over to Jim.
Thanks, Jim. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll start with the previous assessment we conducted in 2020. Dave Ford asked us to look at the big picture organization-wise, put together a better flow of leadership and management with a new organizational structure. We did that. We had to interview a diagonal slice. We didn't interview everybody. We interviewed a diagonal slice of Public Works and Water and Wastewater. What is he or she saying at the top, and what is he or she hearing at the bottom? And they're never the same. I should just give you a little background. I started my 53rd year in water, wastewater, stormwater on Monday. Today's my birthday. I drove 5.5 hours to get here to support the two folks from the town. I grew up 30 years in the public sector. I started as a truck driver laborer. Of the assessments we've conducted around the country in Canada, 150, we've had 2,800 people down to 15 people. Doesn't matter, the process stays the same. It's what are you trying to achieve? So you read some documents so you can ask smarter questions during the interview process. And you go and you field observe business practices to say, here's what I heard, here's what I read, is it what I see? And they're never the same. I'm just going to be honest. The place was dysfunctional. It's as easy as that. But knowing that coming in, it's a little bit easier to maneuver around once everybody agrees that they need help. Our bottom line is to say, how do you know where to go if you don't know where you are? The only way to find out where you are is to assess all the business practices, all the contributing attributes to those business practices through the process I described. So we did that here. One of the biggest takeaways was you had a person who was the director of public works, the town engineer, and the water and sewer superintendent, and that just wasn't going to work. That was a bad idea. We suggested that he take one of those positions and fill the other positions. You had an assistant director of public works at the time who I think was overseeing water and sewer. And I think his name was Scott. And I liked Scott, actually. I thought Scott was a good guy. And I told you I was going to be honest, so I'm just going to tell you that when something goes wrong, it's typically leadership that's the issue. And I'm sorry to say, but not Jim, but under Jim, he has to rely on the people under him to make things happen. And you didn't have a good leader, I'm sorry to say. And I think that affected the morale of everybody in Public Works, water, sewer, it didn't matter. That sometimes is hard to work around and hard to work with. But we still managed to come up with a solution, and I don't think it was actually implemented. So I understand Dave is gone, and Scott is gone, and Randy's gone, and Rod's gone. Right now you're working without a superintendent, but with talking with Steve and with Jim, I think that's okay if you find the right person to be an assistant to Steve and let that person take over water and sewer, or have water and sewer credentials. And I'm here to tell you, if you don't do something like that, you'll burn that man out. So I worry about his health, and I say that sincerely, coming up through the ranks as a young boy. Been there before as a director, or manager, and superintendent. People weren't watching out for me, and I burnt out. I try to do everything, and that just can't happen here. Let me ask me any questions you'd like, please.
An interesting one. Out of 151 studies you've done, how many were not dysfunctional?
Oh, a fair amount. Not 50%, but a fair amount.
Okay. So there's a fair amount that you do a study and you're like, you guys are good.
No one's ever good. Let's put it this. So let's just take Public Works. There are 30, arbitrary number, 30 business practices with Public Works, strictly Public Works, and there's 75 attributes that support it. In water, in wastewater, there's 70 business practices, and there's 200 attributes that support that. You have to look at all of them. Let me tell you what the top 3. So I'll try to put this as simply as I can. After reading documents, after interviewing a diagonal slice of the utility, and after field observing business practices, not people, we come up with a score, and the score is not a number. It's initial, unaware, developed, and managed at different levels. And you agree on that criteria at the very beginning. We put together a finding report that says, here's what the business practice is, here's what the effective practices of the industry, but here's what we found. Still doesn't mean we get it right. How do we know we get it right? You go off site, and you have this one giant square where people who were interviewed and field observed business practices participated in a consensus workshop. And you go through every business practice, every attribute that supports that, and did we get it right? Of the 152 that I've done, soon to be 153, we've changed a dozen lines, because we do get it right. But the consensus workshop is, as you go through them, and I'll give you an example in 1 second, as you go through them, it's their chance to be voice at the table. Everyone has a voice, one giant square, not tables, so everyone has a voice at the table. And there's your chance, if you don't think it's right, to say something. I'll just tell you who it was. It was Manchester by the Sea, a very affluent community in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. No way.
And 18 people, because it's a small community. And the manager said, I disagree with this, that we do it this way, and we should change the score. And 3 of his staff stood up and said, Steve, we don't do it that way. You just think we do it that way. We do it this way. So they had a voice at the table. They got to say something. Please.
Yeah, if I look at your past report, you talked about one of the alternatives was to divide Public Works and water sewer utilities and have 2 distinct departments, which is what we had before we hired Dave Ford, who came with all those skill sets, more skill sets than one person can use and manage in a job. And it seems to me that we are talking about a need to split into 2 departments. because it is too large for one person on top to really keep a handle on all that's going over all those departments.
Let me qualify that then. Based on the leadership that you had, that was my suggestion, because that was the best thing for you to do. You should not split it. You're not that big. If you put an assistant under Steve who can go down that road and do the water or wastewater, you're not that big. I did it because Dave was, I'm just sorry to say this, Dave was doing so much damage.
God, boy, I wouldn't have gotten it from the report I got here, that there was damage being done and that we had a real crisis.
Well, the damage was in the leadership piece of everything.
I just didn't read it in here, so I'm surprised to have it stated tonight. Anybody else have any questions?
Not right now.
One more.
Sure.
How necessary is it to have a middle management person underneath Steve that already has a skill set that's going to cost us $300,000 when we don't have $300,000? Can we bring in somebody who can grow in the position with the town, or is it going to have too much of a learning period where we're going to flounder and have issues?
I don't think they have to have all the skill sets, and $300,000 is a lot of money. I'm surprised at that. But here's what I would suggest, that you, Jim and Steve, have to get together and say, these are our needs for this level of service, and these are the skill sets we have to have. And under Steve's tutelage, and I've only met Steve a short time, and I spent an hour with him a few weeks ago, I'm very impressed as a former water and sewer director. He has all the skills to lead and manage people. That's huge. He has the skills necessary in the knowledge of water, wastewater, and public works. So he can help that person. But you have to support them doing that.
Because I've heard that kids that are coming out of college with civil engineering degrees are landing jobs at $140,000 a year. I just had a friend who told me that their son's friend, $140,000 a year. That's more than maybe more than our director of public works. It'd be one of the highest paid positions in the town. So that's hard to fill a position if you don't have the funds.
So let me say two things about that. The $140,000 is probably in a different system. Everything is relative. You know, if you want to come to a community like this, which is, you know, a pretty nice community, and the money's not there, you have to want to come here, regardless of what the money is.
Does any other selectman have any questions, comments?
Not yet.
No?
Not yet.
So, I mean, that, I think summarizes what
Are you-
Jim was here to talk about.
Oh, I thought he was going to keep going. I'm sorry.
You know,
Maybe I do.
Please.
Thank you, and thank you for your opening remarks. And thank you for the report that you did 4 years ago. I read it again. It was good. So the task that I think we took was to avoid having a conversation about organization, because that's the town manager's. You got to go figure that out. The task that we took we didn't get into how the management system would work, goals, objectives, and all that stuff. I figure that's parked over there. The task that we took was, and we tried, at least for the water and sewer side, we tried to make this a simple, how do we do planning and how do we do doing? Where's the plan function? Where's the do function? What fits into those two things? And I was curious, you know, have you encountered that kind of an approach? Because we didn't say we need a director of A or an assistant director of B, but I think we did a pretty adequate job trying to figure out the plan and the do. And now what we need to figure out is what kind of skills and abilities do we need in the plan side, and then in the do side, and it could be we share those responsibilities on the due side, because the same person that digs up the road to fix a water pipe might be the same person that digs up a road to resurface it, right? So we kind of get into that. So have you come across, that kind of a bottoms-up approach, or did we spit in the wind here and miss a whole bunch of time?
All the time, but we weren't tasked to do that.
No, we did it. We did it that way.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah, we did it that way, yeah.
Bottom up is the best way to do it.
Yeah, okay.
It gives you a bigger picture. And when you do it that way, when you conduct the assessment from the scope that we just presented,
Yeah,
you're providing the framework for a structured approach to the management, operation, and maintenance of public works, water, sewer, doesn't matter, in a more business-like manner. That's what the approach does.
yeah.
It's quite successful around the country. And to your point about the plan, from the assessment, let's say there are 30 opportunities for improvement that fall out of it. At that same consensus workshop I talked about, the group prioritizes, here are the top 5, and you get to vote on what those are. Then you watch that go. But in there is succession planning, there's emergency response planning, there's the preventive maintenance piece. All of those plans fall out of that assessment piece, but that's not what we were asked to look at.
No, stipulated. I got that part. I just wanted to make sure that, that we didn't, or at least I didn't, spend a whole bunch of time doing something dumb.
No.
I just figured you'd figure out what the work is, figure out the skills and abilities are that you need, organize around that work, set goals and objectives, let them go.
But you have to have a leader that can put all that into place.
And that was not in my remit, because we have to make a predicate here that we have one.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
And if I didn't say it before, I think your report back in 2020 was pretty outstanding.
Thank you.
And you're right, we didn't implement some of this stuff. We didn't implement much, if any, of that stuff.
So I'll just finish with this. Around the country, I don't forget where I came from, so I give back a lot. And I have several hundred friends around the country that call me and just ask me for questions and advice all the time. And both Jim and Steve know they have that as well. Just, you want advice, give me a call. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
All righty. I guess we'll now go into the Board of Selectmen's work. And before we get started, I would like to have discuss the authority granted to the town manager and the Board of Selectmen by state standards, the relationship between the town manager and the Board of Selectmen. I want to point out that the local government receives its authority to act from the state statutes, and I will use selectmen or selectmen, since that is how the New Hampshire RSA are written. The role underneath the Board of Selectmen when you have a town administrator, the town administrator works under the Select Board. The Select Board retains all of its statutory authority. The town administrator manages the staff with limited power, and the town administrator has no statutory power. The Selectman town manager form of government, the town manager is the chief administrative officer, has statutory powers as outlined in RSA 37, has particular duties in RSA 37:6. In 1970, 54 years ago, the voters approved the town manager form of government for Wolfeboro. The town manager is the chief administrative head of all departments and staff, and the Board of Selectmen has less statutory powers than the Selectman town administrator form of government. The Selectmen roles are defined in 41:8. The Selectmen manage the prudential affairs of the town, which is a general oversight. What is meant by prudential affairs is not well defined. The Board of Selectmen does not have a direct authority over the town manager's duties as defined in RSA 37:6, and the board should not micromanage the town manager. The Board of Selectmen does have specific duties outlined in RSA 41:8, such as regulating highways, setting fees, managing town property, and financial accounting, and that's just to name a few. The Select Board hires and fires the town manager, evaluates the town manager's performance, sets goals with the town manager for the coming year. The Board of Selectmen does not have direct control over the everyday operation of the town. That is the town manager's duties. And I don't know if any selectmen want to make any comments or talk any further about any of that. Okay.
The only thing that I have is I have conferred with someone at the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and they did say that you can, in dealing with a town manager, ask him if, say, a letter is going to be sent out to an organization, a group on behalf of the town or the Board of Selectmen, you can ask him what date would that be going out, and if he said Thursday, then you can say, okay, we can make a motion, we can say the town manager is going to send out a letter to X on Thursday by 4 o'clock in the afternoon via certified mail. That's not telling the town manager what to do, that's not micromanaging the town manager, that's an agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the town manager for a duty to happen that is pertinent to the business of the town.
Any other board members want to have any comment?
I'll just say that, I agree with you, thank you for reading all that out, Linda, and stuff. That's kind of reaffirms our positions and our code of conduct and stuff here for the board. So I think it's every now and then it's good to probably spell it out so the public knows too and stuff, and what to expect from the board as far as how we act and react with the public and departments and everything within the town. So, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Paul?
Yeah, not meant to be in any way as a reaction to what has been said by anybody thus far. Just my perspective on things. I believe it's my responsibility to make that person sitting over there as successful as possible. Because if that person over there is as successful as possible, the folks sitting out in the audience are going to be hopefully satisfied with the product that this town delivers, whether it be highway, parks and recreation, whatever. And I think it's incumbent on us as a board, from my prior experience, to not get into the weeds unless we're asked by the town manager to do that. And I think that in that role we play staff to the town manager. If the town manager says, could you go figure out why something's not working? And so I think there's a give and take there. I think what was raised, though, and this is a reaction to something, I think what got raised is, I think we need to all agree that clarity of deliverables, dates, things, we got to be clear with each other as to how that all works, because if we don't, then the consuming public begins to scratch their head and wonder what we're doing. And so but I think at the beginning and the end of this, I see it as my responsibility to make that person over there as successful as possible. And that's through appraising and through support and through giving them advice and all that other stuff that we're supposed to do. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, I'll go on. And I looked at what one selectman has, and one selectman has no authority. The Board of Selectmen authority rests with the board acting as a whole. All actions of the board must take place in public by a vote in favor of an action by the majority of the selectmen. One selectman does not have the authority outside the authority granted by the whole board, but we retain our individual rights. One select member cannot ratify any action. Select board members may not circumvent the right to know law with private conversations between the majority of the board. but RSA 41:29L, the Select Board can approve payments of payroll and invoices through contemporaneously signing manifests. And the public hears what we have signed. We read those numbers out during our bulk vote, but that's why we're allowed to do it. And RSA 79:10 LB, we're able to approve intent to cut outside of board meetings with 24-hour notice. The town manager and the Board of Selectmen's relationship, and I think that's what you were talking about, an effective relationship between the town manager and the Board of Selectmen must include working relationship with mutual respect, a shared direction and a vision, a commitment to move forward together, and a willingness to discuss problems in a constructive manner. The town manager's RSA 3761 reads, to organize, continue, and discontinue from time to time such departments as the selectmen from time to time to determine. Based on RSA 3761, the Select Board and the town manager are evaluating the town's organizational structure to ensure the town government is running effectively, efficiently, and is financially stable to provide the citizens of Wolfeboro with first-rate town services. I don't know if any other board members want to make any comments or say anything.
I think I'd add to that, Linda, when you talked about the manifest there, because I was asked this when I was chair a little while ago, about we read out the bottom line each meeting of what the manifest was, and we were asked, do we just blindly sign that? And I did respond at the time. I think it's worth saying again that we all have the opportunity and are sent electronically a complete detail of every check that does go out for every bill that is paid and added up onto that manifest. So I think it's just worth letting the public know that we do see the entire pay list that does go out.
Thanks for that addition, Brad.
Could I add to that?
Yep.
And so just to add to what Brad said, before we get a look at that, the finance director signs her name and says, these are good to go. The town manager signs his name and says, these are good to go. So there's been a couple of sets of eyes on these numbers because I think it's reasonable to expect that if you're pushing $275,000 of bills out the door, to know exactly whether the dollar amount of a given bill for a given vendor was accurate is probably a push. But there's a faith and trust that we have the finance officer and the town manager saying, I think this is okay to sign. And then we have all of us who bring our individual backgrounds and skills that say that either does or doesn't look well, and then that gets sorted. So I think there's adequate, I don't want to say safeguards, but there's adequacy in the way in which we move money out of the town in terms of paying bills.
And if I know in the past, sometimes I questioned an invoice, I can go into the finance director, they'll pull out the drawer, they'll show me the invoice. So at any point, any member of the Board of Selectmen can see any of the backup information. So thank you for adding those things. What I would like the board to do tonight is to report out on the work sessions that they had with each other. We divided up into groups of 2. We were to review job descriptions. Some selectmen interviewed and met with staff. So I'm going to start over here with Brian and Dave. They can tell you what they worked on and what they found, and we'll work our way down.
So we started by looking at the town manager's description of his job and what he does and what he might not have enough time to do, because Jim has taken on the role of doing things that are generally not a town manager's purview. He is involved a lot in watching the capital projects under a microscope because they're $14 million projects. And he's doing that partially because we have a Department of Public Works that needs an assistant underneath them. We have a finance director who needs an accountant under her. So we looked at that job description. We looked at the job description for our finance director, for our human resources, and for our what was the last one? Oh, our IT person. And we found out that there's a cascading effect. What's happening is the upper level management is doing jobs that need to be done for the next step down, and it's cascading down to the next step and the next step, which makes it very difficult for them to do what their job descriptions are. Well, we can change their job description. No, wait. We can change their job descriptions if we want. We can make it so that their job descriptions have it so that they have less to do, and then they'll excel based on their job description. But that's not what it's all about. It's about getting the work done for the town that needs to be done for the town. And from everything that we looked at, and we haven't finalized it, but we talked to the administrative assistant for the town manager, the head of the electric department, the head of the Department of Public Works, the finance director, HR, and from what we've seen is it aligns exactly with what we were just told. The first thing we came up with is we need an assistant Department of Public Works. That was the very first thing that we found out. The second thing that we found out is that our finance director is doing the job of a finance director and a town accountant. And that's too heavy a lift. So there's two positions that I think we should focus on and start looking at as soon as possible. And I think it's a beginning. That's not going to fix everything. It's a beginning. But we have to make some kind of incremental steps to get these directors in a position that they can direct a staff underneath them and not be stretched.
Dave?
That's pretty much.
You don't have anything else to?
Not at this point.
Okay,
May I ask a question?
sure.
I wasn't following the cascading analog that you were providing. Tell me again about the cascading.
What happens if you don't have any middle management in place, the top management can do one of two things. Just let it go, and things don't get done, or they pick up the slack. And if they do, then you're taking their job description and you're adding parts of a middle management position to them, and they're being overworked. And then what happens? Oh, okay, so now the person underneath has to now pick up the slack for that person. And then the person underneath has to, and by the time you're done, you have people doing 1.5 jobs or 1 1/3 jobs instead of doing their job that they are hired in, the job that's described of them.
Any other questions? All right, I'll go to Brad, and I guess Brad and Paul did a section, and then Paul, yeah, and then Paul and I did another, so we'll do your two, and then we'll come back to ours.
I'll start, and then Paul can
Okay?
fill in the blanks that I leave there.
Mike, Brad?
Sorry. Yeah, Paul and I worked on the Parks and Rec. We interviewed Christine and Chuck on these, and I think overall we felt that the job descriptions are pretty good that we have here. There is a couple parts in there that we want to maybe address a little bit from because it was a little over a year ago, we separated out the Pop Whale and Abenaki from Parks and Rec and hired a director for that portion of Parks and Rec. And while we know that the two are intermingled because of the facility there, you know, Parks and Rec will be doing some programs in there and stuff along with knowing that the director for the POP and ski slope is also in charge of filling up the facility, to create the income from it and get the most use out of the facility that we can up there. So we're understanding that. There's probably a couple little tweaks could be done to separate out in the verbal part of it so that it's cut and dry as to what parts they're in charge of. I think in like Paul and I both came away with in the Pop Whalen portion there, the description I felt is pretty good there, but there's some areas in his in the duties there that he could definitely use some help on. So I think that's something that would need to be addressed with staffing within or under the director over there to help him, succeed. As Paul was saying, we're here to help, not just town manager, but everybody in the town, all the department heads to succeed, to hopefully give them what they need to perform their job to the best of their ability. So that was one thing we did identify there. But overall, I felt the job descriptions were pretty good there, and I'll see if Paul has any further blanks to fill in.
Thank you, Brad. It was fun to have a conversation with the head of Park and Recreation and the head of the Abenaki. So the Park and Rec position description was created in September of 2016. I just think as a general proposition, it's not a bad idea 8 years after it got written to kind of freshen it up. It does cover a lot of ground. There's a lot of tasks in there. And again, I'm not here and we're not here to talk about the management and how that works, so I'm not going there. There's a bunch of activities that get done. One of the things, though, that I think at least I observed is in the description of activities, there's a commentary that says, for plans, strategic plans, and things of that nature. And again, as an outsider watching TV for the past couple of years, I think I'd say a little more muscle in that area, a little more emphasis in that area might be helpful. Because in general, questions come from the consuming public that says, well, what's the theory of the case here about how Parks and Rec ought to function? And I think that probably is an owed answer to people. But there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think that when I looked at the Abenaki, Pop Whalen Abenaki position description, which was created in 2023, it was created last year, there was a little, what I call blurring between the position descriptions. They were kind of overlapping a little bit, and I think that's just a matter of working at the seam to kind of clean that up. I'm going to violate my own premise. I heard from both people, Parks and Rec as well as the Pop Whalen, that the transition between the two functions seemed to go pretty darn well. It wasn't a calamity. It worked out pretty darn well. More work to be done. Now move over to Pop Whalen. If you read the position description and you put it down and you say, what is this telling me? It's a lot of bullet points. It's a ton of stuff. It focuses a lot on running the hill, running the trails, running the operation. And I'm not saying it's lessened because it shares equal weight, but the selfish person here says, oh, by the way, we have an enterprise fund and we need to deliver on the commitment that enterprise fund is going to come across the finish line and break even. And I think the programming piece in that position description could need a little bulking up. That would be my 2 cents on that. But so I'd buff up the 2016 iteration of Parks and Rec, even if it just has a new date on it. But I'd make sure that you all feel comfortable with that. The 2023 job description is in draft form, and I think you folks need to get it out of draft and get it into permanent form. And I would encourage that we get a little more strength or a little more emphasis on the financial aspect for Pop Whalen, and then the planning aspect for Parks and Rec. Did that cover it? We're done.
Yeah?
I'm wondering, when you looked at the job descriptions for Pop Whalen and Parks and Rec, and I know that there's a lot of programs that need to be developed and brought into Pop Whalen. How much did you consider that it used to be one job done by Christine, and now those have been split in two? So in reality, there should be enough weightlifting there to hopefully handle the load.
Well, it's interesting you offered that. I think it goes back to what you might have been observing earlier with your review, and that is there enough time in the day for them to wind watches? Is there enough time in the day for them to do the things they're supposed to do? So I think that's a management question I'd put over there. And I had this silly idea, should programming be kind of carved out of these things and put in a different place? But that's a conversation I think we should have maybe downstream. One side of me says, don't do that. Keep the functions whole. Keep the accountability central. Don't blur it, because when you blur it, then you get pointing of fingers. But yeah, I'm not sure that you get a direct one-for-one. You get more capacity when you break it in half. Now, basically, we broke it in half, and we said, now go manage the rink, and oh, by the way, the trails, and by the way, Abenaki, and by the way. So I don't think you get a one-for-one. But that's a good one for him to think about.
I'll add to that just a little bit here that we did have those types of conversations with each of them, knowing that there is a intermingling between those separated departments, if you want to call it that, at Parks and Rec. And one thing we did find out is that they do have a computer program of scheduling there that does flow between the two of them. So there's a process there for them to observe the needs and programs that one group is doing with the other, and the other one's facility, basically, type of communication going on there. So it does seem to be working. It's still a work in progress, but it is in place.
Any other comments? Okay. Paul and I did water, sewer, and public works, and I'll let you start off, Paul, because we did the dues and the planning.
Well, thank you for that, Lynn. I appreciate that. So a different approach in this part of the task, because there is no water and sewer leadership, and so having a conversation with that function or that functional leader wasn't available. So what Linda and I attempted to do, setting aside personnel and administrative duties, setting aside, pay and all that stuff and who reports to whom, we tried to do what's a plan activity that takes place over there and what's a do activity. And so in no particular order, we said there's a planning activity that has to take place in water and sewer that says, what's the capacity of these assets that we have? And the capacity could be, what's in this, how much effluent can we put in? How much water is in the pond? How much are we sending down the pipes? How much are we collecting? Capacity planning is a planning function, and we need to get really good at that, because mistakes that get made in this critical area are expensive. On the do side, there's how do we make sure that we're doing quality testing of our water, our sewer, how does that work on the do side? On the plan side, we talked a bit about plant distribution asset management. We have these facilities, and pump stations and things, and how do we make sure that we put them, and there is a I shouldn't say rudimentary, there's an asset management plan there that needs a little bit more boning up, strength. And then on the do side, how do we actually send people out and actually work on those facilities? What's the plan to get all that stuff? How do we do that? How do we make sure that the budgets get that stuff done? There's design and collection for both distribution. You have to design new systems. And you have to design how water gets collected, how water gets distributed. There's IT and systems operations on the do side. How do we make sure that we know what's going down the pipe? How do we get the bills out? How do we coordinate with Brenda? How do we get all that stuff done? There's a lot of grant money that's over there, and I know that that's been it takes a lot to write a grant. You know, there's grant research you got to do. There's grant writing you have to do. So there's a plan function and there's a do function. And it's not clear to me, and this is an organizational comment, it's not clear to me that you delegate that to headquarters. I'm not sure that that's a good idea, but that's just me. You know, if we're doing any work in terms of letting out projects, we have to make sure that we do a really credible job on RFP generation. We have to make sure we do, and that's on both sides, on plan and do. I mean, you can't generate an RFP and then have the do side of the business say, there's no way I could implement what you want to design or what you want to bid out. On both sides of the equation, plan and do, there's bid reviews, there's systems assurance, there's project management. And I think one of the things I think I heard one of my colleagues say is the project management of some of our big capital projects right now is an area that I think is of risk because it takes away from that this is talking about people. It takes away from that person's time and at the expense of other things that have to get done. Federal and state compliance is important on both sides of the equation. Whether you're planning or doing, you got to stay up to date on what's going on with the feds, what's going on with the state, you know. And you guys know better than I do that there's a whole bunch of new stuff coming down the lane in terms of requirements and statutes and things of that nature. We have to talk a lot about communications with public stakeholders. I mean, people like to know what's going on with stuff we're working on, and that's a plan and a do function. We need to make sure that we have people who are on the do side that participate in the capital improvement so that we don't miss substantial projects. On the do side, there's emergency repairs, plant collection and distribution. And again, I'm not trying to do organization here, but it's entirely possible that, you know, as I mentioned to the gentleman from previously, I mean, it's entirely possible that the people who work on our streets are the same people who'd be working on our water and sewer lines. So we don't have to have like these big separate monolithic functions, but we've got to make sure that the functions are covered. Planned upgrades, environmental monitoring, liaison with DES, liaison with budding towns, liaison with abutters, spray field design, spray field operations, pump station planning, pump station operation, pump station repair, pump station collection, emergency stuff. Contract administration with the current operator. We outsource the operation of our sewer plant, and we have to have some oversight and some. We can't just simply you take care of it. Not suggesting we do that, but we have to have a relationship and a contract administration function. Efficiencies and best practice stuff, that's on the plan side. And I think we do a lot of these things, but the question is, are we doing them to the extent that it actually results in a better efficiency at the budget level, at the operating level? And that to me is something that, you know, we'll park that over there. Future system planning with New Hampshire DOT. Coordination with DOT, project design oversight, project management of funded projects. So that our approach was plan, do, and now if we missed anything in there, you come back and say, you missed some things. But then the next question I think for us, or at least for me, would be, we need to figure out where the stuff gets skilled, who it reports to, and how quickly do you want to get it done? And I'll just give you a parenthetical that says, I think not having people in this function right now is a critical risk, and we should be about the business of doing something. I hope I'm not stepping on your thoughts. We should be doing something in here like immediately to resource that.
I think definitely from our conversations, that's where we came, that we have the water sewer department without 2 staff members.
Right.
And that's the critical risk. I looked at, and as we went through all that, it was a good learning experience for both of us to break that all apart. But when I went to the job descriptions, it was clear that we have an old, outdated job description for the Public Works Director, that there's a need for new job descriptions in the water sewer utilities. I wonder whether whether in that process we are going to need a superintendent's position, or whether that will be one that we move out. But what I really felt as we went back and forth with some of this, that we were missing the administrative executive level tasks for both the Public Works and Water Sewers, such as oversight of the capital projects and its budgetary management, asset management plan, applying for and administering grants, risk management of infrastructure. I thought I went back and looked at our postings for the town engineer, and that we did add some wording for assistant town manager. If that is a way we want to go, we need to better define what we're talking about in that job description. We need to make sure we have somebody overseeing our consulting firms. We need to have somebody who can work with the department heads to write and apply for grants. And those were generally the ones that I found. And we need to decide the skills of the positions that we're looking for. So that's what, yep.
So as Jim, what was Jim's last name?
Shane.
Shane?
Shane.
Shane. Okay. As he kind of alluded to, you come to Wolfeboro not to make money because you like Wolfeboro. But when our ability to pay is so much lower than the type of engineers we're looking for, we need to, with our job descriptions, reach a better audience. Talking to the department heads and some people, and knowing young people right now, and I know a lot of them who are graduated from college in the last 4 to 5 years and in the last year or two, because they're all my kids' age, and knowing that they're entering the workforce and looking for jobs, if they see a position that we are putting out that requires an engineering degree, a master's in engineering, 7 years of experience in water and sewer, 2 years experience in road, we're asking for so much that we don't have any audience for it.
Well, that's kind of why I said we need to look at the skill sets we're looking for.
Yeah.
That was exactly my comment.
So what we need to do is we need to make it so that we have a larger pool and a larger audience apply to our positions, because it could be somebody that only has a 2-year degree from NHTI in project management, but has worked 7 years for a large construction company in, say, Exeter, and they know water and sewer and roads and bridges. And they've done that, but they look at it and they go, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to bother applying. Yeah. I'm making 85 now, and that's 92, and they need an engineer, and they just wash their hands of it.
Yeah, that could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's you could create a position description, basically not price. You could skill yourself out of the market, get no takers. A couple of other options you could consider is whittling down the responsibilities, and that might be, I think, akin to what Brian was saying. Whittle them down. And then the other is you take a make-buy decision, and that's a little provocative, but you buy a resource that immediately addresses your need. You search for the permanent resource, and you feather it down until the permanent resource is up to speed. You could kind of do that. But I think the point being made here is if you put too much into the position description and expect perfection from the person on day one, you might find yourself disappointed because you won't find it. You might want to think about breaking it up or buying the resource, and I won't mention company names, but you buy it and then you bring up the skill.
Well, I think in some ways we did buy the resources by using consultants because the town engineer didn't arrive. And I think that's part of all what we're doing here is to try to figure out how we mix it all up now and what is the best combination and where can we find the staff that we all agree we need some staff here. Anybody else have any other? Brian?
Yeah, the last one I have to say is Jim also spoke about secession plans.
Boom.
And that's what we have to figure out. We know that we're going to have a finance director who is going to retire soon. We know that we're going to have a town manager that in 20 years won't be here anymore. And we need someone who is going to be underneath them to support them and to learn from them. I am huge about apprenticeship. An apprenticeship has been used for eons, and it works. And those people will learn from our capable leaders, and they will work their way into those positions going forward. That's why I've usually kind of leaned towards trying to find young, energetic people that have a good ability to think. They have good cogs, and they can learn. And they're willing to work hard and be mentored and work into a position. And I think that's an important thing to go. They will. Then we will get someone that will come to our community, love Wolfeboro like we all love Wolfeboro, and stay here and be part of it. That's why Jim's here. He came here from the time he was a kid.
Anybody else? Dave?
Well, one of the things we did find out as well is what you had mentioned earlier, was our town manager, form of government, is pretty clear. And it's pretty clear, it was to me anyway, when we read through those RSAs and stuff, our hands are tied to a point because he's in charge of the town. We're not. All we can do is take suggestions from the town manager or give him suggestions. We cannot run the day-to-day operations of the town. So that means that we need to give him people that he can work with. And again, so many times when we start to get into this stuff, we mention people's names like department heads and all that stuff, and we shouldn't be. We should be looking at the job descriptions for that position. But we're all very capable of putting either Jim or Steve or Casey or whoever into those positions. Right. And we shouldn't be.
Correct.
As far as the job descriptions. Now, what we also found was that some of the job descriptions are all over the place. And that's a problem. And I think that we need to take the information that these fellows that were here tonight have given us and utilize them, because they don't care who's in that position at all. And we shouldn't, because if we're going to make positions, yes, there needs to be some kind of description for that job, but some of those are already done. We've been doing them for years. And we just need to be careful to take the people out of the position that is there now. And I think a lot of times we're not doing that. That's my feeling.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just think too that kind of like what we do with our rules of procedure and stuff like that, we take a look at it, I think annually on that one. Maybe we should kind of set a policy too, once we get through this exercise of our job descriptions of revisiting them maybe we could probably go 5-year span or something like that, because some of these jobs and positions will kind of morph a little bit, and the town manager might see that there's some shuffling that he might want to do with assignments, on different departments and stuff that could be, that should probably be written into the job description and stuff. So rather than have some of these ones that we looked at are, 8, 9 years old now and stuff, maybe some are even older. So I think it'd be a good idea for us to kind of keep that on our plate to revisit once we get done with this every 4 or 5 years or something like that.
I thought when we did I know in 2006, when we did our wage and salary study, we also had some job descriptions rewritten in relationship to the scale that we were coming up with. And we may want to kind of put it to when we do a wage and salary study, and we probably should be doing that and the job descriptions at a set period of time. I think the two fall together, is how we've done it in the past. I think where Brian was going, and I agree, that we want to have staff have the ability to grow and move up in their position and in their profession. And I think we're kind of what you were talking about, and I think that's an important part of a town, to have that possibility for its staff. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I mean, I would really enjoy saying I'd like to have a career in this town. That would be great. And it's a common complaint across corporations and other organizations where, we always go outside and hire talent and we never seem to grow from within, and that's, that can be a flaw. All right. So we gave Jim, at least I think we gave Jim, a whole bunch of stuff here, and I'm not gonna try to put it into a prescription, but I would say that there are things that I would encourage you, Jim, to think about as do now, do next week, do later. And the do nows, you take a look at what we gave you as some thoughts, but there are some, in my view, there are some do nows. I second the motion, if there was one, which there wasn't. I second the motion of taking the Totter and Howard 2020. This is a cookbook. This is I went through this and read it, and I made notes to myself, and I was like, yep, we still need to do that. Yeah, we ain't doing that yet. Yeah. So I have like 50% of the pages are, yep, we haven't done that yet. And I would encourage you to kind of look at this stuff, and as you think about do now, do next week, do later, some of this stuff may just jump right off the page and do it. The last one I would suggest we do is the job descriptions, as Mr. Senecal said, they're kind of like, they just need to get freshened up, and I know that's task work and it's yucky, but if you're going to do a credible job, understanding what tasks are, which ultimately leads to compensation, which ultimately leads to goal setting, which ultimately leads to, results. People probably want to have some clarity about their roles and responsibilities. So that's my last point. Thanks for letting us do this, Jim.
Okay. All right. So the next, I guess one of the questions, we have the 2020 Tate and Howard report. We got an estimate of $51,000 to upgrade it. And I don't know where the board stands on whether they want to put $51,000 in a default budget, or whether we want to, as you said, Paul, take what's here and adapt it to where we are today. And there are a lot of things in here we haven't done. So that's the question for us. Who wants to start?
A pen went up down there.
How about Brad? Who will let you start?
Yeah, I agree that Tate Howard report was very informative to pull off the shelf, dust it off, and take a look at it again. I remember when we got it originally there, and a lot of good information in there. I think right now, because we are in default, I think it'll be tough to justify spending, $51,000 to update this document. And as Paul pointed out, there is a lot of good information there that we can still build off of. So my suggestion would be, or my, moving forward would be to really go through this with more detail, apply what we can out of that into what we're doing here, and keep in mind, maybe in another, year or two when we're, when the budgets are looking better and stuff, at that time maybe upgrade it, because by then we might have incorporated more of these items from this one, and it might be looking for newer, more updated items to take a look at. So I think there's plenty there to work with for now, and would give us a good jump on what we're trying to do.
Okay, I'm going to go over to Dave. Where are you, Dave?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Brad, and I think that there is a lot of information in there that we can pull out, and we can work as groups still, or again, maybe more. What, you don't want to work with me?
I'm just waving at you.
That's fine. But I think there's enough information that we have from that report. And that report gives us a pretty good overview of what's been happening, what was happening at least then. And again, I agree with Brad, we're in a default budget. We can't spend money. We didn't have that in the budget to begin with, so.
Brian?
So I saw it as sticker shock also. And I also see that we had a missed opportunity tonight, all of us. While he was standing at the podium, we should have asked him, your updated study, how much different will it be? How much change will it be in the study compared to the study we have? Is there going to be 10% of the information updated and changed? 30%? 40%? What are we getting for our $51,000?
Yeah.
I think I can answer part of that. Under the business practices of the 2022 report, it identified an assessment of all the business practices, and he laid out a number of what those assessments within the business practices for public works are. Yeah. There is a lot of work to evaluate those business practices, and it is, I do believe, my opinion, and I think this is where they were going with it, you need to do that business practice evaluation before you can do your job description updates. Because you need to know what you're doing for work to be able to create a document for your staff to work from. And, I would just, as I reread this report over the past month, there were a couple things that really jumped off the page that frustrated me incredibly, and I take ownership in this. Had we engaged in any of this stuff 4 years ago, we may have grown somebody in-house to be able to step into that assistant role, and we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now. But we didn't. That falls squarely on my shoulders. That also falls squarely on, frankly, the shoulders to an extent of the staff. If they got the report. If they got the report, there's some personal responsibility there as well to say, you know what, I want to do that. And that's what I did 15 years ago when I made the determination that I want to go back to college and I want to do something more. So I think that I would absolutely not engage with this scope of work in a default budget. I think that is a recipe for disaster for the 2025 budget. What I would consider, and we've got time to discuss it going forward, is if this is important enough for us to consider, should we consider a standalone warrant article in 2025 to have this assessment performed and fund it that way?
Can I react to that?
I'm heading over to you.
No, you go first.
No, you get it.
No, come on.
You want to react. React.
So I read this this 2020 report, and here's how I looked at it. So our former Public Works Director came forward in September 25th and basically said, I surrender. I'm over my, this is crazy. This is, and by the way, we were carrying $17 million worth of debt around that time, and our debt service was like $900,000. And he cried, not to use he cried uncle. He said, I can't do this anymore. We're at 35 of debt, and we're at almost 4 million of debt service right now. So things have just gotten really big and, really kind of hairy. I think we all share the responsibility of should we have picked this thing up and kind of marshaled resources to do something. I wasn't here, but I would take responsibility as well and say we probably should have done it. I would suggest that you think about looking at just the basic findings. Mm-hmm. Just go through the basic findings, and I think to answer Brian's question, are we going to learn anything new from somebody who says we're underwater, we're having negative personal effect on, and we're inefficient, and we're not providing leadership and management? Are we going to learn anything new from that? No. Are we going to learn anything new that says the state of New Hampshire needs to have a certified water operator responsible to oversee the management, operation, maintenance? Nope. Are we going to learn anything new that says in the short term these things may work, but in the long term you're going to? Nope. Are we going to learn anything new that says, to your point, we don't have succession plans, and it's not just in water, it's in the big hitters, right? Big hitters. Nope. Are we going to learn anything new that we need to improve the way in which we communicate with stakeholders? Nope. We may have to mechanistically figure out how to do it better. So I would counsel that you take this document and you kind of look at it and go, what's it do now? What's it do next week? And if we got to validate with these folks at some point, then maybe you call them up and say, here's my thinking. Here's what I think we need to do. Can you give me a check-in validation? But I think there's enough here, even though it's 4 years old. I don't think we're going to learn anything new, to Brian's point. We're not going to get new stuff.
10%.
I don't think. All I know is the stuff that we're dealing with is 50% more bigger in terms of the financials. And so if it was painful then, it's painful now, maybe by 50%.
And they're going to find out that we have less employees trying to do the same job.
And you might have less people trying to lug the cart around, yes.
In terms of that debt service, I think we need to look at where it was before, and a lot more was in your water sewer. And I think now more of it is in the last bit has been more in facilities, buildings instead of under the, because we had, when Dave was there, we had the RIB sites. There was a whole lot of roads and sewer and stuff like that. And I think the big crack or the big increase has come from some of our library.
General fund projects.
Yeah. So it's a good point, but I think the load was here with this group beforehand. I agree with you. I think this one, it gives us plenty of things to work on and to give us some kind of direction on how to deal with some of the issues. And I agree, succession planning, but we need to also find a way to get the staff that we need. We can't just drag our feet. We have that, and that's the do now. Is we've got to get somebody.
Not to put too fine a point on your comment, Linda, which is about debt service.
2 years.
If you had somebody in water and sewer doing the plan function, they might be picking up the phone and calling us and saying, in 2019, we were spending about $9 million in capital in water and sewer. We're down to $5.5 million now. And I don't know why. Maybe we had some big capital projects, but our CapEx in our infrastructure is kind of going. Now, I don't know whether that's good, I don't know whether that's bad, but a planning person in water and sewer might look and say, I need more of your attention to invest in some of this stuff. That would be a possibility.
And that could be a possibility, but I think some of that is in the rate studies that we do.
Could be.
And that we're in a time where some of our debt service is coming down. So, and if we look at our asset, I'd go more for our asset management plan for our water system. I think it is, like $100 million over a set period of time. I think we have it. I just don't think we're using what we have, and some of it is in our rates, and we look at that and we accumulate, but I think we have to pay more attention to that. Anybody else? So board, how would you like to move forward? Do we need to take a vote? I think we have a consensus that we do not want to spend $51,000 at this particular time to update the Tate and Howard report.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there's a motion. That being the case, how would you like to work with the town manager to move on from here and to get some action taking place?
I guess I would ask Jim for maybe a comment from his side, what he would like to see from us as far as the job descriptions. Would you like to see us develop some language for each of these and get it to you to review, rather than have you have to go through these and figure out, from listening to us what our comments were and stuff? Would you like to have us take it to another step?
Even if you can get something to me with the existing job descriptions that lays out some changes that you're recommending, whether it be in hard copy form or electronic format, I can take it from that point and work through some of those items to try and produce a draft for you. That way, I think if everything filters into me, I can take and make those adjustments, as opposed to you making an adjustment and then going to somebody else and making an adjustment to somebody else. I think that would be the way I would suggest it happen.
Yep. Yes, and I'm not looking to put a lot more stuff on your plate, so the more that we can do for you on that is kind of what I'm trying to get at. So, so my gut tells me we probably, definitely our groups need to meet again to kind of work on some kind of a drafts and stuff like that we could get over to Jim.
Yeah, so I hear him saying he wants us to draft some of the changes. We're not going to restructure the whole, we're going to just move over some of the
language in them.
Language. Any other suggestions or?
Linda?
Yeah, Paul?
I'd like to ask you to think about coming back and saying, what do you want to do now? What do you want to?
Say that again, Paul.
I'd like you to think about, we have another session, and you tell us what you think you want to do now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Because we just backed up the truck, threw all kinds of stuff at you. And I appreciate.
No, I think if you guys can get me that information, what I can do is I can take it. I can work with the reference staff members who are holding those positions, create a refinement from that point, and be able to come back to you guys with a program that lays out 1, 2, and 3.
How about the ones we're missing?
How about the one, Linda? How about the one?
Ones that are, the one that's vacant.
Yeah.
There's,
I think that's what he said. I think that he's saying that he's going to look at the job descriptions that we give him, and he's going to look at what holes exist in each department, meet with his staff, and say, what are 1, 2, and 3 plans of attack to.
Well,
See, I thought I heard.
that's great, but in water and sewer, he has no department head and he has no superintendent, and that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We're working on. And
I do think
that's
that
where-
one we can get moving sooner than later.
Okay.
That's a do now.
That's a
Yes,
do.
you guys have stated that. I'm in agreement with that. I think Steve is in agreement with that. That has a series of functional areas, and, if Steve isn't able to come to work for some reason, we have a problem. So we need to get that moving sooner than later, and we can get that moving.
See, I resonated on the comment of, if you don't have the resources to do some of the lifting that needs to get done, you wind up doing it. And there's your cascading analog here kind of clicks in. It just collapses on each other. It collapses on yourself. You're sub-optimized, the staff's sub-optimized, I'm over-dramatizing. Stuff doesn't get done, people get upset, yelling and screaming. So that doesn't work. And so the way out of it is either add more resource or cut function. In a business world, you'd either add resource or cut function. Well, we can't cut function. We can't shut down the water department. We can't shut down sewer. We can't end the fire department. So we have to add resource, and then we have to add it smartly. And so it would be, not to be too prescriptive, but the do now piece, I think, comes in the add resource, and then where, and with what vigor. And then you have to consider, young recruits, seasoned recruits, consultancies. I mean, that's your portfolio of options that you have to look at.
Based on what the gentleman from Tata and Howard said, he's saying that we need an assistant under Steve with water and sewer experience.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's for us to take a look at. That's a possibility. That's one of the possibilities. We're going to look at what the
How do you organize? How does that ultimately get organized? Is your question, or what they were suggesting? And I didn't pay much time trying to figure out who reports to what. But do we need that function? I don't think there's any disagreement. We need that function.
Correct. And I think we need it, and we need to
Chopped up.
fill it. That's the piece that we have to, and we have to fill the staff that we need. And in this process of doing it, we need to give Jim as much of it as we can that's done, so you can pick it up and finish it off, because we can't drag it out a long period of time.
And I think that's Jim's 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
That he's going to meet with his department head and say, we need this position, this position, this position. This is what needs to come first, second, and third, and this is what we need to do. And the people that do the work are the ones that understand more of what they need to succeed than the people sitting at this table.
That's true. I think that's what he was saying. There was one thing we missed, and that is the facilities function. We have, I think in the Pop Whalen position description, it's pretty clear that the facilities management, the painting of the building, the fixing of the groomer, all the stuff that's got to get, I think that's inside that position description. I think we probably need to get some structure from a I don't know what you want to call it, position description, around how do we maintain the rest of the buildings there? Who's the person with a budget that has a paintbrush that fixes stuff or goes around and makes sure that our buildings get done?
And Jim would be able to speak better on this. I think I asked him the question once, and I think I've seen it in some of our paperwork, that it's generally the department head that's responsible for the maintenance of their buildings that are underneath their department.
Yeah.
Yes, but we have buildings that are not under anybody's department. That's kind of what we're talking about. And even having it in that manner, we have had some issues with how best to manage our buildings.
Yeah, so I think that your point is right. I mean, people say, it's my building, I take care of it. And that may be a good idea. It might have been a great idea. The question is, do we, with all the stuff we're supposed to do, the team's supposed to do, is it, oh, by the way, I got to go, do the water thing and the sewer thing or run electric lines. And by the way, I got to make sure my building gets painted. Or is there a different model here that we should explore? And I would just suggest that we might want to look at a novel way of looking at that question, because we don't have any function. We don't have a position description. We've got a box and we got a person in it, but budget, all that stuff just doesn't exist.
But that's not a do now. That's a do.
That could be a due next week.
Yes, that's what I'm saying is, because I think we need to focus on do now to get that part off the ground.
I think state RSA also does say, there is a line in one of the clauses that says the town manager is responsible for the maintenance of all town buildings. Now, that doesn't mean that Jim is going to go out and
Paint it.
and paint the office and plunge the toilet. What it means is that he has staff that
Correct.
maintains the buildings.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that Barry makes sure that all of the MED is maintained to his liking. We had our solid waste facility kind of fall through the cracks a little bit, but we got that into place. So we just need to define who's going to take care of which buildings in town, and then Jim has point people to go to for those buildings.
Anything else, anybody?
Under other business, do we have other business?
No, we don't.
Can I have other business?
No.
Well, I'll ask the board. Are you into?
Are we short?
Well, okay, I'll put you on a timer.
Okay.
8 o'clock, you're done.
Oh, I only need 2 minutes.
Okay.
So it was brought to my attention that the pump station down, and Dave will understand this because he was involved in that. The pump station down on Foss Field, which we have an issue with because we don't know who owns what piece of the property down there. We do know that there was an agreement that it was given to the town after 2 years of successful operation, but we never finalized that with a check the box and another document that said the town does own it. 2 belts are broken on the pulleys. They have been ordered to replace the belts, because with only 1 belt there, if that one breaks, then that pump is inoperable.
Okay, we are talking about the pump that pumps the water out of the Clark Plaza. Okay,
Correct.
so because there's also a pump station down there, so I want to make sure we,
Yep.
okay, that's something that should go on over to the town manager for him to find that out for us and to deal with.
And I walked the facility today with a private gentleman who purchased it and who is still in the throes of operating it. It needs to be turned on when there's an anticipated storm. Not actually when the storm starts, but in anticipation of a storm. And I said, who does that? And it's multiple people that do it. And a fence that's there has been knocked down. A gate that's there doesn't open. Pulleys, like I just said, the belts are broken. 2 of the 3 belts on the pulley are broken. And that pump serves a vital purpose.
Yeah, right.
It keeps the water out. There's a flap valve that goes in, and it actually has a tank, and the water gets pumped down and into the lake, the groundwater, and then what happens is a big chamber gets filled up again when there's a storm with runoff water from all of Clark Plaza. So this is a necessary station, and it needs to be maintained. So we have to find out as a board, after the 2 years that it operated successfully, is it now our responsibility? I think looking at documentations, my personal opinion, it is. But whose property is it on? And if half of it is on one person's property and half of it is town property, then maybe half the fence doesn't fall into our purview unless we wanted to. There's also a big tree that has fallen across the discharge line.
Yep.
So if that tree breaks that discharge line, we have another problem on top of it again. So it is in disrepair, and we have to look at it. I will suggest in March that we have a warrant article that is $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 as a capital reserve fund just for the maintaining of that pump station, because it happened last year one time, and the water flooded right into Harvest Market. So we don't want that to happen again.
Anybody, any other business or anything else?
I do.
Yeah, Dave?
Along that same line, Jim, do you know when we're going to put town property up for sale? In particular, I'm talking about the house on Keewaydon Road.
I do not.
I have had two people just this week ask me about it.
I had one also.
Both of them live down on Keewaydon Road.
I will ask the tax collection office if they can get a list of properties for the board to consider
Yeah,
whether
that
or not
one,
to sell.
we've owned that one for what, 7 years or something now? 7 or 8 years?
I thought there may be a reason why we didn't take it. That's really something we would do a non-public and get that from.
It's now a raccoon house.
We need to get, Jim needs to get that for us, but that's
Yeah.
something we take a look at in non-public. It's not a
Right,
public matter.
Right, I know that. but
Yeah.
We
Yep.
should be aware.
Any other
Nope.
comments or questions from the board? We're comfortable. We're going to work in the same groups
Yep.
to do what we need to do next. Public comments. Anybody in the audience? I'll take Suzanne, and then I'll go to you next.
Hi, Bill.
All right? She wants to let you go.
I'm Bill Trevor, and my suggestion would be to, I guess, the board on overseeing this. If you're going to have a redoing of the job descriptions and you're going to maintain the same sort of salaries that are available to them, probably going to get the same result. And you're going to have the continued cascading, although in that analogy it's going upwards, not downwards. So I was thinking if you were able to make some contact with any of the schools, trade schools, colleges, whatever, in the area, and see if there might be a student or several students who, trying to get the same sort of betterment to their resume over a period of time, would take 6 months off or 9 months off or whatever it might be, and take the 25% overload that the current officers have now of probably lesser priority items, thereby getting something better on their resume, learning a lot. You may come to find that you like keeping them. They may come to find that you like Wolfeboro. And you might accomplish it within the terms of the financial ability you have to pay somebody now. So I just throw it out there.
2 years I've been,
Brian.
Well, I didn't know
Right.
that, so I'm not your shill, but that was my thought.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you, Bill.
Suzanne?
Okay. I'm here to ask the selectmen, as abutters to the Green Home application to the planning board, that's off the Bridge Falls path, to pay attention and get involved and maybe get some advice. I'm having difficulty expressing to the Board of Selectmen, to the Planning Board, that they need to determine what class that Willow Road is from the tracks over towards Back Bay. From Center Street to the crossing, it's a Class 5, poorly maintained road. After that, it's up for grabs. I believe, because of the statute that is failure to maintain Class 5 road, that after 5 consecutive years of non-maintenance, for which we know that section has not been maintained, the plow turns around before the pathway. So I believe it falls into a Class 6 road. So then we get into the issue. I think that's when you get involved, building permits on a Class 6 road. I think that there's a step being missed. And I'm fearful I'm not saying I'm for or against the project. I hardly walk that pathway. I'll probably never see it if it gets built. I don't care about that. What I care about is that the process be followed, the permits that are needed get done, and that a building permit just doesn't come bump in the night and get approved, and then after the fact, we're back to a sticky situation. So I brought for you a couple of pictures. By the way, David Ford did weigh in on this, and he said that the maintenance, the portion that's maintained is obvious. The question is, where did the maintenance stop? And I believe, and I remember him saying, whenever it had a little extra load, or maybe it was Marty Billafor, had a little extra load of tar, we'd drop it, in places like Willow Road or places like that. So it is nevertheless up to from Center Street up to the track, the path. It is maintained. So I went and took a picture this morning, this afternoon, to verify in my mind what I'm saying to you tonight is that there's a picture where the tar ends, the pavement ends, there's a stop sign. It ends there. That's a 5. What the pathway is probably an easement. On the other side of the pathway, there are easements to the property owners. One of the easements is for, to go to the mill. I don't know if those, I know nothing about easements. I don't know if they're good. I don't know what they're for. I don't know how they're supposed to work. But nevertheless, it's not a street. It's not a road on the other side of that pathway. So I'd like to give you the pictures, and then I'd like to say something else.
Madam Chairman?
Is there one for everybody?
It's all right. Madam Chairman, can I ask Brad a question?
Well, why don't you let her finish?
Yeah, okay. Oh, I thought she was done.
And-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So a highway may be reclassified from a 5 to a 6 by the town's failure to maintain and repair the road in a substantial condition for travel thereon for 5 consecutive years or more, RSA 229:5, Roman 5:2. Any person can avert the reclassification by notifying the town of the road inadequacies within the 5-year period. Maintain and apply, as applied to this statute means to keep in a state of repair, to preserve from decline. Snow plowing alone generally does not constitute maintenance, and other work such as repaving or patching must be performed. So the first part of Willow Road, we patch, maintain, plow. The other part, it's quite obvious from those pictures, we don't do anything. Reclassification from a 5 to a 6 due to failure to maintain for 5 successive years does not terminate the public's right to travel on the road. Well, there is no road, but it doesn't stop you from walking, I guess, walking on it. I don't know just how to, I really don't know how to go about getting the message across other than in the end, I'm going to request you to get some guidance on this because on the plans that, did I give them to you? No, they're right here.
You didn't give us plans,
Okay.
you just gave us pictures.
The town clerk has no record back into the 1800s of this road as to the length, because I started off on the premise, what is the length of Willow Road? And I couldn't come up with a definitive answer because everything that I saw ended at the path the Bridge Falls path, and yet the road assets inventory plan has it up to the path. Every plan I look at has it up to the path, and so I grabbed a couple of plans to demonstrate an old plan that was done by the planning board that's a merger of lots. A lot line adjustment shows from Center Street up to the path. And then I used Green Holmes' drawing when he had the multi-unit, because basically he's going to use the same entrance because they couldn't find it over there today, the one that they used the other night. And my concern is two. One, he's using some of the frontage on Bridge Falls Path as his frontage requirement for a lot. Frontage requirement in that zone is 150 feet. He doesn't have 150 feet on a road. Bridge Falls Path is not a road. He needs to come up with 150 feet or a variance or something. But the concern that I have in this plan is he's showing gravel over our pathway to what's going to be his driveway. Now, I think the Board of Selectmen have every reason to be concerned because there's going to be construction going over there. There's going to be new lines run through and under or the pathway for water and sewer. I know the planning board will be looking at that, but I'm asking the board to also look at it simultaneously. And just he's using the width appropriately, but I believe, but the length of this gravel goes from what I consider the end of Willow Road, from center to the pathway. He's then picking up and going over the pathway with gravel.
Okay. Thank you. All righty. Thank you very much. And I'll pass this.
That picture there.
Yep.
And then if you read this small print, it talks about the access to the mill.
Okay. I'll give those to Jim, and we can get copies to everybody. We're not going to be able to read it tonight,
Yes,
but
I
we'll
could
get
do,
copies to everybody.
As I said, Ford's information to me, because I was looking at the length, he pointed out the more important issue is what's maintained. Because he never said it, but I just found it recently, the fact is that failure to maintain, it's not a road anymore. And so the statutes that I think you have to look at are 674-41, and we also have, and 229:5 Roman numeral 5-2. That's the 5-year statute. And 674-41 is the state law that says there are 5 classifications of road. If they aren't those classifications, it's called the state law. The state law supersedes our law. It's the powerful one. It's the one that counts. And so they are telling us there's a class 5. There's a road shown on a plat, which I heard last night. Well, the road is shown on a plat. It's not a road anymore. And maybe it was 90, 100 years ago. When we stopped maintaining it, it's not a road. And then there's a class 6 road, which you all are familiar with because you've had the good and the bad and the ugly of the class 6 road. And it's a class 6 road, but only if governing body, after consultation with the planning board, has adopted a policy, which out of all the Class 6 road stuff. You just recently adopted a very good policy. And then,
Suzanne, you've had way more than the 3 minutes, so can you?
you want me to do what?
I said you've had way more than the 3 minutes, so if you can wrap it up.
Okay, well, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like you to leave all my papers, and if I could get them back, because I don't have copies for everybody. And then what I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to do is check on 175-55-1, lots with no frontage, and the Board of Selectmen's policy for the Class 6 road building permit, and 674-41, the state law, minimum access, and then the 229:5, Roman numeral 2. And I'll just leave this. You can pull out what you think is pertinent or relevant to help you.
Okay.
And I didn't have access to make copies.
Okay.
Is that right?
We'll have somebody look through them and make copies for us for the things that we need.
You're familiar with it.
Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Paul, did you have a question?
Thank you, Suzanne. There's a question for Brad. The Green Life Homes had a conditional approval last night. Do you recall what the 2 items of the conditional approval were? One was having a lawyer check out whether it is a Class 6 road.
Yeah, one was on the boundary, the wetland delineation.
Yeah.
Where the driveway is going down through and the property on
Yeah,
a portion of it that's previously
yeah,
filled in.
yeah.
And the other one was on that the
Rendering.
architectural
Rendering.
standard would be such that it doesn't appear that it's a duplex.
Right. The rendering that says the
rendering.
door is not. So there were 3, I think there were 3, right? So it
Well,
was,
those are I'm trying to think what else got added on. I'd hate to
Yeah.
say stuff off my memory here. It's all obviously
sorry
documented.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
So as I watched the planning board, I thought there were 2 or 3. One is, got to find out whether this is a Class 6 road, conditional approval. Got to make sure the rendering of the building doesn't show a door, which that was condition of approval. And there had to be some kind of a discussion of this. So my question rhetorically would be, are we being asked to research the same question that is part of the conditional approval that was rendered by the planning board? That's just a rhetorical question. Are we doing that work?
Well, I think she also was, if I understand, is also whether there was frontage on using the Bridge Falls path as the frontage.
And I believe that was discussed at the planning board last night. I believe it was.
But I think what she's saying, that is our property. I think that strip in there, I believe, is the town's property. Am I correct, Brad?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now, because it was a weird little angle in there that they were marking out as the frontage, and then, that it's obviously going to be debatable now on the right-of-way or a Class 5, 6, what, is on the other side of the path there, so I'm not prepared to, speak to that part of it at all yet.
So in reality, the majority of it is going to be cited by the by the planning board. The only issue the Board of Selectmen will have if there's any use of town-owned land.
For the frontage.
For the frontage, and she would like us to check on the Class 6 road, but I think they are going to get a legal opinion.
That's right.
And we need to make sure the legal opinion is what
Is shared.
Correct.
we want and shared in what we want.
Thank you.
Board, are you okay letting her come back up? Yeah. All right, come on up.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I just think there was a misinterpretation on what one of the planning board members was asking for. I prefaced my discussion with the portion of Willow Road easement from the pathway to the end.
Right.
I think
It's
they
from the-
were thinking I was saying from,
Okay.
And I was not.
Okay.
And when the planner repeated the motion, he said to see if Willow Road is a Class 6 or 5 road.
Well,
That was not the intent of my whole discussion.
Okay,
And
but-
I started with my discussion.
But if we take this thing, we
That-
see the stop sign, you're talking over the path and down, and we can just get,
That's what I
Jim,
was
you can
trying to
clarify that they're getting the opinion for the right thing? So let me pass it down.
And it's relevant to you because whatever the outcome is, there's going to have to be some input, I do believe, from the Board of Selectmen.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I think we have one more.
And only to take 1 minute of my 3.
Okay.
I will continue to work with the town manager to plan and do the activities of my job and my department, but I do want to say thank you, Brian, for taking time out to meet with me and hearing what I have to say. So, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, Paul, Brad, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.